Imagine a world where a pair of blue jeans is a symbol of treason and a simple haircut can lead to a labor camp. In the Hermit Kingdom, the most mundane choices of daily life are transformed into the most dangerous battlegrounds of ideological warfare. The architecture of prohibition, the concept of a ban in North Korea, is not merely a legal restriction, it is a foundational pillar of the state's existential philosophy. To understand why something as innocuous as a specific style of trousers or a brand of shampoo is prohibited, one must first descend into the depths of Juche ideology. This uniquely North Korean philosophy, pioneered by Kim Il-sung and refined by his successors, emphasizes self-reliance and the absolute purity of the Korean socialist race. In this framework, the everyday is never neutral. Every object, every sound, and every aesthetic choice is either a contribution to the revolutionary spirit or a weapon of capitalist contamination. The ban is the primary tool used to maintain the mosquito net, a metaphorical barrier designed to let in the fresh air of trade when necessary while filtering out the germs of foreign influence. This systemic prohibition creates an environment where the state manages the sensory experience of its citizens from birth to death. The architecture of this control is built upon the 10 principles for the establishment of a monolithic ideological system which essentially functions as the supreme law of the land, superseding even the national constitution. These principles demand total emotional and intellectual synchronization with the supreme leader. Consequently, anything that originates from the outside world, particularly from the puppet state of South Korea or the imperialist United States, is viewed as a Trojan horse. We often take for granted the ability to choose our morning beverage or the music we listen to during a commute, but in Pyongyang these are high-stakes political decisions. The state views individualism as a corrosive acid that dissolves the collective unity required for the regime's survival. Therefore, the banning of everyday things is a preventative measure against the most feared phenomenon in the DPRK, the independent thought of the masses. Historically, this intensified after the collapse of the Eastern Bloc in the 1992. Seeing the fall of the Berlin Wall and the execution of Nicolae Ceausescu, the Kim dynasty realized that foreign pop culture and consumer goods were more dangerous than nuclear warheads. They realized that if a citizen begins to desire a Coca-Cola or a pair of Nike sneakers, they might eventually begin to desire the political system that produced them. This realization birthed the culture of hypervigilance, where the Gyukulde, the youth league patrols, roam the streets not to catch violent criminals but to measure the length of a woman's skirt or ensure that no one is wearing a hairstyle that hasn't been officially sanctioned by the state's aesthetic committees. Silicon shadows in the 21st century. The most significant front in the war against the everyday is the digital realm. While the rest of the world transitioned into a hyper-connected global village, North Korea constructed the world's most sophisticated digital panopticon. The smartphone, an object that billions of people use to access the sum of human knowledge, is in North Korea a strictly regulated tracking device. While North Korea does produce its own smartphones such as the Arirang or Pyongyang models, they are fundamentally different from the devices we know. They are banned from accessing the global internet. Instead, they connect to Kwangmyong, a national intranet that is essentially a walled garden of state-approved propaganda, cooking recipes, and technical manuals. But the ban goes deeper than just the connection. The operating system itself, often a heavily modified version of Android known as Red Star OS, is designed to be an informant. It features a software called Trace Viewer which takes random screenshots of the user's activity at regular intervals. These screenshots cannot be deleted and can be inspected by security officials at any moment. Furthermore, the banning of foreign media, films, music, and news is enforced through a sophisticated watermarking system. Any file that does not have a state-issued cryptographic signature simply will not open on a North Korean device. This has created a high-stakes cat-and-mouse game between the citizens and the Group 109, a specialized strike force dedicated to rooting out foreign media. For a North Korean youth, owning a USB stick filled with South Korean K-dramas is a thrill comparable to smuggling high-grade narcotics. These USB sticks, often called Notels or Nosat players, are portable media players that are highly prized because they can be easily hidden and can run on batteries during the frequent power outages. The danger cannot be overstated. Under the Reactionary Ideology and Culture Rejection Act passed in 2020, the consumption of South Korean media can lead to years of hard Labor and the distribution of such material can carry the death penalty. The state understands that the Hallyu Wave, the global popularity of South Korean culture, is the single greatest threat to its internal padashi narrative. When a North Korean sees a drama from Seoul, they don't just see a love story, they see a world where ordinary people have electricity cars and the freedom to complain about their government. They see a version of themselves that is prosperous and free, and that realization is a lethal blow to the Kim regime's claim of being a socialist paradise. The aesthetics of obedience, the physical appearance of a North Korean citizen, is a canvas upon which the state paints its ideology. There is no such thing as personal style in the DPRK, there is only the socialist lifestyle. This manifests most famously in the state-sanctioned haircut list. While the popular myth that there are only 28 allowed haircuts is a slight exaggeration, the reality is not far off. Men and women are expected to choose from a narrow range of styles that emphasize neatness, modesty, and a lack of decadent Western influence. Long hair on men is frequently targeted in state media as a sign of mental infirmity, while dyed hair, especially blonde or red, is viewed as a direct act of cultural sabotage. But the most iconic ban remains the prohibition of blue jeans. To the Western eye, blue jeans are the ultimate neutral garment, but to the North Korean state they are the trousers of the American imperialists. Wearing them is a visual declaration of affinity for the enemy. This ban is so strict that even tourists are often advised not to wear blue jeans when visiting certain monuments, as it is seen as a sign of profound disrespect. The enforcement of these sartorial laws falls to the Socialist Women's Union of Korea. These are groups of older women who act as self-appointed morality police, patrolling public spaces like train stations and markets. They carry scissors to cut the hair of those who defy the regulations, or to slit the hems of skirts deemed too short. Piercings are similarly forbidden, as are clothes with English lettering. Even the way one wears the mandatory Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il lapel pin is regulated down to the millimeter. This pin must be worn over the heart on the outermost layer of clothing, and it must never be obscured. To lose a pin or to treat it with anything less than religious reverence is a crime that can ruin a family's songbun. The socio-political caste system that determines everything from where you live to what job you are assigned. The ban on Western fashion is an attempt to erase the individual's identity and merge it into the monolithic mass. When everyone looks the same, everyone is more likely to think the same. This aesthetic uniformity serves as a constant visual reminder of the state's presence in the most intimate corners of a person's life. Reflection in the mirror. Forbidden echoes. Silence in North Korea is not the absence of noise, but the absence of unauthorized sound. Music and religion are two areas where the state's bans are most absolute and most punitive. In a typical North Korean home, there is a hardwired radio speaker that cannot be turned off, only turned down. It broadcasts state news and revolutionary hymns from dawn until dusk. To listen to anything else, to a foreign radio station like Radio Free Asia or a pop song from the West, is an act of subversion. Western instruments like the saxophone were once banned as capitalist instruments, though they have seen a slight rehabilitation under Kim Jong-un, who enjoys a more modern aesthetic for his propaganda troops. However, the lyrics must always serve the state. The ban on religion is even more profound. While the North Korean constitution technically guarantees freedom of religion, in practice, the only permitted deity is the Kim family. The Bible is perhaps the most dangerous book in North Korea. To own one is to invite immediate execution or life imprisonment in a political prison camp. Kwan Lee So. The state views Christianity in particular as a tool of Western intelligence agencies. This creates a hidden world of underground churches where believers meet in secret, whispering prayers and memorizing scripture because they cannot risk having physical copies of the text. Even secular holidays that are ubiquitous elsewhere are banned. Christmas is non-existent. Instead, citizens are expected to celebrate the birthday of Kim Jong-suk, the mother of Korea, and grandmother of Kim Jong-un. There is no room for the supernatural or the divine in a system that demands the supreme leader be the sole provider of all blessings. The psychological toll of this acoustic and spiritual ban is immense. It creates a society where the inner life is a dangerous secret. People learn from a young age to watch their mouths because the walls have ears. This environment of total censorship extends to the very vocabulary people use. Certain words used in South Korea are banned, replaced by refined Pyongyang versions to prevent linguistic drift that might make it easier for citizens to understand foreign broadcasts. The state is not just controlling what people say, it is attempting to control the very tools they use to think. The confined horizon, the restriction of movement, and the ban on everyday mobility products create a geography of containment that turns the entire country into a prison. In most countries, if you want to visit a relative in another city, you simply buy a ticket or get in your car. In North Korea, this is impossible. Private car ownership is virtually non-existent, reserved only for the highest-ranking elite and those who have performed extraordinary service for the state. For the average citizen, the everyday reality of travel is a nightmare of bureaucracy. To leave one's home district, a citizen must obtain a travel permit that specifies the destination, the purpose of the trip, and the duration. These permits are checked at internal checkpoints that dot every major road and railway line. This ban on free movement is designed to prevent the spread of information and to keep the population tethered to their assigned workplaces. But the restriction of the everyday also extends to biological and domestic needs. For decades, foreign feminine hygiene products were banned or simply unavailable, forcing women to use reusable rags, which led to significant health issues. It was only recently, as part of Kim Jong-un's push for modernization, that domestic versions became available, yet they remain a luxury for many. Foreign books, magazines, and newspapers are strictly prohibited. Even a newspaper from a friendly country like China is viewed with suspicion, because it might contain news of a world that is moving faster than North Korea. This creates a time capsule effect. When defectors finally cross the border, they often describe the overwhelming sensory shock of seeing the everyday things we ignore. Variety of snacks in a convenience store, the ability to walk into a bookstore and buy any title, or the simple act of driving across a bridge without being stopped by a man with an AK-47 demanding to see your papers. The ban on the horizon, the inability to see what lies beyond the next hill, is the ultimate form of psychological imprisonment. Cracks in the monolith. Despite the severity of these bans, the everyday has a way of fighting back. The history of North Korea since the Great Famine of the 1990 seconds, known as the Arduous March, is the history of the Jangmadang, the informal black markets. When the state's public distribution system collapsed and people began to starve, the bans became secondary to survival. People began to trade whatever they could, and in doing so they created a massive illicit economy that the state could not fully control. Today, these markets are where the bans are most visibly flouted. You can find South Korean rice cookers, Chinese smartphones, and even Western movies, if you know the right person and have the right brain. Slang term for the US dollar. This has given rise to the Jangmadang generation, young people who grew up relying on the market rather than the state. For them, the bans are not sacred laws, but obstacles to be navigated. They are more likely to have seen Squid Game or Crash Landing on You than they are to have read the complete works of Kim Il-sung. This creates a profound tension within the country. The state reacts with increasingly brutal legislation like the aforementioned 2020 law, but the genie is out of the bottle. The everyday thing, a piece of chocolate, a K-pop song, a pair of skinny jeans, has become a form of quiet revolution. Every time a North Korean woman puts on a bit of contraband lipstick in the privacy of her home, or a young man listens to a smuggled radio broadcast, the monolith of the state's control cracks just a little more. The banning of everyday things is a testament to the regime's fear. They know that their power rests on a foundation of isolation. If the North Korean people are allowed to have the everyday things that the rest of the world enjoys, the extraordinary lie of the Kim dynasty will finally be exposed for what it is. The battle for North Korea's future is being fought not with missiles but with the mundane, the ordinary, and the forbidden. As the digital age slowly pierces the Iron Curtain, the question is no longer whether the bans will fail, but when the collective weight of a million small forbidden choices will finally bring the walls down.